Welcome to Geek on Film with your hosts, Robbie Holmes and John Hosch. Hey folks, this is Robbie and my friend.
Hey, it's John. What's up? How is everybody?
We're just going to blow your eardrums out on the first 30 seconds of the show. Welcome aboard, folks. Good to see you. This week's episode, the main review is going to be Black Panther Wakanda Forever, as the title says, but we have a lot of other fun things to talk about. And really, I think the big one for me is John's just he's a Christmas guy. We're sticking with this. This is really fun. His personality's changed. He's no longer Spooky John. He's now, you should see him. He's like wrapped in tinsel and garland. It's ridiculous. He's wearing a hat and a nose. I don't know where the nose came from.
You don't know where the tinsel is. You don't know. You don't even know.
Yeah, you don't want to know. Let's jump into the television we've been watching this week. So I'm going to start us off. I made it to the 7th episode of Reboot. This show just continuously blows my mind. It is so fun, so ridiculous. I don't know that there's anything even to say. This is the episode where Clay is trying to do ADR, Johnny Knoxville's character, and he's terrible at it. And then Hannah is having to deal with that. And then Gordon has to, and they send Bree over to the writer's room and Gordon has to deal with that. So that's really ridiculous. It feels like such a sitcom trope to be like, we're going to send one another to the other room because we think we're getting one over on the other person. Yeah. So it's like, it's an unbelievably meta episode and it works. Like there's no aspect of it. The Judy Greer, everything Judy Greer says in the writer's room feels like it's an ad lib. It feels like she's just making it up right in the moment. And it's just possible. Perfect. You know, like the other thing I wanted to note is I'm a huge fan of Never Not Funny. It's one of my favorite podcasts. And Jimmy Pardo is good friends with Paul Reisner. And he was just on. And Paul Reisner, literally they were talking to him at the beginning about Reboot. And he was just like, you totally ad-libbed the line about the desk being too short. He was like, yeah, I was supposed to hit the desk and I missed it. And so I was like, I can't just miss the desk. I got to be like, well, that desk is shorter than I thought it was. And he's like, that was the edit that made it in. He's like, I didn't even know it was going to, we shot like 20 versions of that. And that was the one where I missed the desk and they were just like, perfect, nailed it. Like, but he did absolutely. And he said they're having so much fun in the show because the writer's room feels legitimate. Like the back and forth, he's like, I've been on so many shows, but like listening to him talk about it was this really fun. The honesty he feels like that show has is very different than other shows he's been on, you know?
Yeah. The reason Johnny Knoxville can't do the ADR is because also he's sober now. He's like, he used to do it like, you know, well intoxicated and stuff like that. And he just continues to grow, I think, as a character, as an actor. The show's really great. If you're not watching it, it's on Hulu. The whole first season's out now. So you should just binge the crap out of it.
Yeah. I think one other nice one was that Paul Reisner's done so much in his career, and he talked about Keegan-Michael Key, and he's like, that guy, there's just nothing he can't do. Like, listening to him talk about him, it was like, so he's like, I went back and started watching some of Key and Peele, and he's like, there's no wonder these guys are who they like. They were making movies every week, and
now available on Netflix. You can now watch stream Key and Peele on Netflix. So you should watch that too.
But yeah, he just the amount of fun it seems like they're having, but also the amount of respect this crew has for like there's no love lost. This feels like it's genuinely turned into the show that is all about chemistry and to hear him talk about the behind the scenes, somebody who's sort of like a comedy icon and been around and the guy who's been so many television shows and film, but like he's talking about this one in a very special way. And it adds to my excitement to hear such positive things about the show, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that it's like from a lot of the people who worked on Modern Family. I'm just kind of curious about the longevity of the show, though, because it's based, you know, as it's based on like a television show versus like just like, hey, we're a family, so we can grow and you can grow with us.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how many seasons they're going to kind of go for. So
I don't believe it's actually been picked up yet for season 2. And Paul Reisner was like, this seems like a no-brainer. Like the writing staff is so good. Like the show is doing well. He's like, we're just kind of waiting. I'm hopeful. Well, this is the kind of show. And Jimmy's like, you want it to get to 5 seasons? And she's like, I don't really. I want it to be funny, and I feel like we've got the genuine funny in this show. Like, and a second season seems like an absolute no brainer that they should be able to pull that ripcord. So I wouldn't be surprised if they got that notice soon, because it's such a unique show. It's so different than everything else that's on, and the sort of making fun of the nostalgia berries that like these reboots are having is perfect, right? Like there's no better fodder for creating like a mockumentary style show, in my opinion, right now.
Like, I'm glad, and I'm also, I think it's also hard to kind of gauge the popularity, maybe because it's on Hulu and it's streaming, and those are like a different. You're dealing differently than if it was like on network television.
Yep.
I honestly think this could have been on network television if they just bleeped out the curse words, kept them in for when they ported it over to Hulu, and or DVDs or Blu-rays if they would still make those.
Yep.
But I'm pretty sure that like the shows that do that on network television, I love when like you're like, oh my God, that person actually swore, but they bleeped it out because it's on network television. So I think I don't know. I almost feel like this was a misstep to put it directly to Hulu, but who knows?
So that's funny. You reminded me that there's actually another show that I started watching this week with my wife. On HBO Max, there's a show called The Big Brunch, which is Dan Levy.
You love brunch.
I love brunch. And the show is unbelievable. It's about 10 people who are trying to do something for their community, to start a restaurant, to start a sustain. But it's your typical cooking show with a giant heart, Dan Levy is the guy who is executive producing it, and he also is getting a chance to eat all of the food, which I think is awesome. But
it's the reason to do a cooking show, right?
Yeah, well, and it's also set in the same kind of environment. It reminds me of like not Hell's Kitchen. Which one was it? But like they have a front of house and back of house, and the front of house actually has a bar, and they have a bartender who like makes them cocktails. So that, because literally the two judges with Dan Levy are really amazing chef and a really amazing restaurateur, and the woman absolutely said pointedly, she's like, well, brunch is cocktails too, right? Like, so the first episode is all about them showing who they are, like prepare an entree and also prepare us an appetizer, and it's just so much fun. Like it's sharp, it's emotional. These people obviously care about what they're doing. But there's a woman, the first episode has a very diverse cast. Like everybody who's a part of it it's not a whitewash show in any way, shape, or form. This is let us embrace every aspect of the world and every aspect of gender and every aspect of nationality. And I just, it's unbelievable to see people represented, but also they're good chefs. Like they chose this amazing group of people that are all kind of inspirational. And one of the women has an amazing tattoo of chopsticks down her arm. Like sometimes you see like a chef's knife on somebody's arm if they're a chef, like where it is a part of them. And she has these like very simple just chopsticks on her arm, and they're eating her meal, and she just starts crying as they're describing it. And she's like, they're like, what's up? And she's like, you're understanding the story I'm telling. Like, that's amazing. Like I love cooking anyway. It's like such a passion of mine, but to watch a show that is letting people embrace what makes them happy and who they are, and is also like going to help them. The outcome is like $300,000 to do whatever it is they would like to do. If it's like make a cookbook to represent who you are or your community, or is it to open a kitchen to teach kids to cook? Like, but it broke me. Like the trailer broke me. The first episode broke me. We're suckers for Dan Levy anyway, but like just the concept, and he's also so awkward and funny. And at one point, like he goes in to talk to one of the chefs, and she's like, she even jokes around. Oh, that's why it made me laugh. As you mentioned the swearing, this show makes me laugh because they curse, and you don't see that often in this type of show. And you'll literally be like, somebody will mess up, and they'll be like, "Fuck," and you're like, it's so funny to see that on a show like this because you're so used to it being on network television. So a couple of times, just the curses alone made me laugh, and I was like, "That's amazing!" Like it's such a funny concept that that's why I think reboot works, right? At one point, they in one of the scripts they joke about the fact that like you can't just make somebody fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we have the pen, we could just write that they fall, and they're like, well, it's such lowbrow humor, it's not funny. And then immediately somebody turns, walks, trips, and falls, and the whole writers' room laughs, right? Like it is,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's funny to watch somebody fall, like, and stop trying to overcomplicate this, and I feel like that's the show really gets the idea that like let interesting, unique people who have a skill go do it, and then let people who are really good about this talk about it with them. And just every there's no aspect of the show that isn't emotional, and I
Mm-hmm.
would highly recommend it. It's on HBO Max. It's called The Big Brunch. And we're in. They dropped the first 3 episodes, and I think it's going to be 12. But if
Whoa,
you're looking for a new show to watch that will make you laugh, cry, melt into a puddle, like this might be it.
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. Like I feel like they like even on reality shows, like let them swear, but like just bleep it out. Like
Yeah,
even I feel like that brings even more reality to the reality shows. So,
yeah.
what's
Why don't
going
you
on
jump
Game of
over?
Thrones? Oh,
Okay, so we'll go to Game of Thrones. So we're
yeah.
in season 8. I think the part of season 8 we're at is the very beginning. So we get the Winterfell episode where everybody is moving towards the Night King and his hordes. So they're all moving north and they're coming up to Winterfell. It's also the episode where we get everybody together for the first time, right? Like all the
Mm,
storylines converge at Winterfell. You've got the Hound, you've got Arya, you've got everybody's there, right, for the first time. Jamie Lannister shows up right at the end of at the beginning of the second episode. It's the episode that is probably the most emotional. I was saying this to Amy last night as we were watching it. That is the episode where he knights Brienne of Tarth, and
oh,
it's
right, right,
just
right.
it's camaraderie, it's respect, it's like you bring together all these interesting characters, and also Eric the Redbeard makes me laugh every time. I can't. He's at this point, like Amy's making fun of me and being like, "Your boyfriend's on screen," and I'm like, "Yeah, he's ridiculous." Like you don't see him in camera when Jon Snow arrives with Dany, and he goes to go to the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who's his friend, and Eric just tackles him like boom, like hits him really hard. And it doesn't look like it's staged. It looks like he, as the actor, may have just like stayed behind a cameraman and just tackled Kit. Like
Right.
the reaction's genuine, right? Like he's like, so glad to see you. Like, and it just, his energy is unbelievable. Every scene he's in always and he always still oogling Brienne of Tarth from a distance and just like, is that big woman here? Like, he's just so fun, like,
Yeah. I
he
feel
brings so much levity to the show.
Yeah, I felt like uh, him in that show. I thought that was going to launch him into like a huge career and I don't know. I mean, I've seen it like I feel like he was wasted in like the next Fast and Furious movie after Game of Thrones ended and stuff like that. I just felt like I would see him more like on my television. I don't
Yeah.
know I'm not following his career totally, but he's such a good actor and he creates such memorable characters.
Yeah.
Um, that I think he got a commercial deal at some point, like near the end or during Game of Thrones, where I think I remember seeing him on some like T-Mobile commercials or something. But that guy's awesome. So
Yeah, the episodes are just we're winding down the show and they haven't yet screwed it up in my opinion, right? Like so
yeah.
it's going, these are the first. This is Benioff and Weiss were without books at this point, right? Going into the beginning of season 7, and I feel like they did some things really well and some things they didn't do really well. These are the scenes like where you're bringing the storylines together, where
Mhm.
they have helped create and shape the characters because it's their interpretation, and to getting these actors that they've actually like harangued to play these amazing characters in the show and travel all over Iceland and Ireland and and go to Spain, they finally get them all to the same place and you get
Yeah.
to see them together, and you also get to see the wonder of like the people of Winterfell seeing the dragons,
Mhm.
right? They have no trust for outsiders. So you've got the Unsullied coming in and then the Dothraki and it's Dany riding next to Jon and they're all skeptical. And then for the first time you hear the dragons screech and fly overhead. And there's that moment of like fear, but respect.
Mhm.
And that's the argument that I really love in the episode where It's the question is like that he gave up being the king of the North, which is what they made him, and he bent the knee.
Right.
And he says very pointedly, like, it was the greatest honor of my life, but like I chose to protect the North. That's what I was doing, not to have the pride of being the king.
Mm-hmm.
And I still feel like I did the right thing. I brought back 2 armies and 2 dragons, right? Like to help
What more
us.
do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the episodes of where you get to see Kit Harington seemingly. I know there was a lot of weight on him for a long time in the show. I feel like he's talked a lot about the pressure of that show. But some of these episodes where it's like him and Amelia Clark like standing and having like conversing in the middle of Winterfell, or he gets to see like Maisie, like Arya's like comes up and hugs him. Like those are the scenes where I feel like Kit got a chance to like all the hard work of quote unquote carrying the show on his back like came to fruition because they're all together, you know, like, and
Yeah.
those episodes just seem lighter. There's something about them where there's the camaraderie of 8 seasons of the show where you get to finally see it come together, and they're now one band, right? It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter that you're from Essos or you're from, right? Like it's a big tent for the first time, you know?
Yeah, I can't believe that like I think I remember reading or hearing or whatever that like, like season 8, I think it might have been like one of the first times or the first time that like Amelia Clark and Kit Harington met, like cuz
Yeah.
they were never on the same locations together or like actually in the same storyline. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like it just goes to show you that Game of Thrones was such a huge show back in the day and still like leaves an indelible mark. And now we've got House of Dragon and stuff. And what did we say? We're not getting House of Dragon for like 2 years now.
I think it's 2024.
Yeah, so like you might as well start going back to doing what Robbie's doing and like going back and starting from the beginning of Game of Thrones, or kick off rewatch all of House of Dragon, then jump into Game of Thrones or something.
Yeah. The other thing to remember is I'm watching these on 4K Blu-rays. It's physically one of the most annoying experiences because the discs are hard to read. They're not clearly marked and labeled, but
Oh,
also they are, but they're like hard to read in the dark. So I always
you have
have to
to like
like
read
angle
around
them.
the edge.
Yeah, the writing on
Oh,
it is like part of the design, and I'm like, this is
right.
not optimized for watching this in a home theater that you don't have a spotlight on the disc. You know,
You got to
the
get a
other one
little
is it.
light clip to your glasses.
The other one is they don't like the idea of having something like this that has like 32 discs.
Hmm.
It's hard to remember where you are if it's a rewatch. So we constantly end up in this situation where we're almost telling our robotic overlords to remember the episode that we're up to, like,
Right.
and that helps. But sometimes you forget, and you're like, I don't know, was it like season 7, episode 6?
Get
And then
yourself
you
a
like,
dry erase board.
yeah,
Or no, get
right,
yourself a clapper, like a on set, like a clapper,
uh
and then
huh.
write the episode or the season and the episode on it.
Thankfully, Amy did buy me a now showing stand so I can put the
Nice.
disc on it, but it doesn't help when the season has 4 discs. You know, like
Fair
it's
enough.
one of these. At least we're in this season. You know,
Yeah.
but yeah, I will say that the experience of watching this on 4K Blu-ray on my television. So I have the Samsung 65-inch QLED television that's like 2 years old at this point with the direct light array. It's beautiful. It really is amazing. It doesn't have Dolby Vision because they don't. Samsung isn't in bed with Sony for that proprietary codec for their HDR, but it supports HDR10 and HDR plus.
Hmm.
But seeing this show, and also the other thing that's dumb about the experience is it does not default to Dolby Atmos as its soundtrack. It defaults to Dolby 5.1. So every time you put a disc in, you have to go to settings, you have to go to sound, you have to go to Dolby Atmos, and then you have to go back to like episodes. What episode am I up to? So like there's just no, it also doesn't do a good job of like storing information on your 4K Blu-ray player that like
Hmm.
this is the episode we're up to. Like sometimes you put a disc in and it says like resume. You know what would be
Yeah.
great if this did that, right? Like if I didn't have to think about it every time, you know. But it looks amazing. I don't know that I've ever seen this show look better than it looks in this experience. It didn't look this good on HBO Max. It didn't look this good
Right.
on HBO, right? Like you've got so much bandwidth and so much data available on these discs, and they shot it with like amazing cameras, and the sound is very like atmospheric and it's very object oriented. when the dragons fly over, like it starts like in your back right and goes all the way over the top of your landscape, right above the platform of the sound, and then back down on the other side. You hear that, like it's the battle scenes. You hear that you will hear like the swords clinking. If somebody turns their head to the left, you'll hear. If the battle is to the right, it's 100% there, right? Like
Mhm.
the sound is really directional and object oriented in this Dolby Atmos track. And I wish that somebody was giving awards for like this presentation of it, because
I'm sure
as
there are
great as it
awards out there.
was, yeah, I'm sure that there are some physical media awards, but it's the kind of thing that like there are episodes of Game of Thrones that are so dark that watching them on your streaming television experience, even if you have a good TV,
Mhm.
it's too hard to even tell what's going on.
Sure.
And there's now an entire world of this. So like it's expensive. It's like $150 4K set, but you can catch it on sale. And I would suggest it. Like go keep an eye on it. Like if you're interested in it, usually about Christmas time, I think they put it on sale for about $100.
I
But it's like
mean,
$100 for 8 seasons of television.
yeah, it's like we're recording this on the 14th of November,
Yeah,
2022. Dude, there are already so many Black Friday like deals out
yeah,
already. It's crazy. Like I feel like Black Friday now starts in October.
yeah.
So the issues you're having with the discs and stuff, is that disc specific? Do you have other movies that you watch in 4K that remember the settings, or is that like an issue with the player itself?
So this is like where a little bit I'm going to get a little nerdy on this, but like the
It's
Samsung
called Geek on Films, though.
the 4K Blu-ray player I have is the Samsung M800 M2. And
Available in the show links.
it is, yeah, it's definitely somewhere. But it's a really good 4K Blu-ray player, but it has a couple of limitations.
Mm.
I feel like its handling of these types of things is hit or miss. It
Hmm.
feels like certain production companies use the features that are available better than others. And I think the other
Gotcha.
problem is it seems to have some audio dropout experience throughout the watching of things. Um, it could be my sound system. It could, but I believe it's this player because I don't have these audio dropouts from like my PS5,
Hmm.
so I can watch things from my PS5 also. But you're often better to go with a dedicated player because you don't want to burn your PS5's disc
Yeah,
reader out because
because then you can't
it's
play the
not
new
meant
God of
for that.
War.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a perfect utilitarian system, and it can fill whatever hole you need it to fill in your media center. But
Hmm.
you're better off spending a couple of $100 and getting like a dedicated 4K player. Right
Right.
now, I'm in the market to replace mine. I've had it for 2 years ish now, a year and a half. But the problem is that I'm experiencing some of the things that people complain about with this specific 4K player. Some people
Gotcha.
say it has to do with heat, that there are heat problems, and that causes it to sometimes cause it to drop out audio. But for most people, that also includes the video, so you'll get like a blackout, like a
Mm.
8 millisecond drop blackout of the whole thing. For me, the video plays constantly, and then I'll get these dropouts of like audible like blackness, a lack of noise for
Hmm.
like seconds. You can
Oh,
it's
weird.
not like it drops out and comes right back. It's like I'll miss whole words sometimes.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. So I'm now eyeing. Panasonic has two players that are kind of tops for home media experiences for a home theater. One is about $600 and the other is about $1,000. So I've been trying to watch out on Black Friday deals
Mm.
to see if especially the $1,000 one. That one has all the bells and whistles and really is the one that people talk about. I think it's the Panny 4000. Like people, that's the shorthand people often call it.
I love it. The panty.
Yeah.
Oh, you got the panty? Nice. I want the panty. Let's get the
At some
panty.
point, I need to really put up on geekonfilm.com. I've talked about creating a our setups page so you can go and look at what we do, and then I think one of our first YouTube videos that we're going to do for the show is probably a walkthrough of like my home theater and giving people the opportunity to see what and how I watch home media at home. I'm now at I don't know close to 100 4K Blu-rays and it's sort of become my home theater experience is almost as good as going to the cinema, especially if it's a crappy theater. Like I mean, not to point fingers at Regal, but
Oh,
one of the Regals close to my house has one of the really some of the worst looking screens I've ever seen.
mhm.
Like, and I've complained about it to them. I've warned them. I've not been a jerk. I've gone and said, like, I can actually see the silver coming through the image. Something's wrong about the way this is calibrated.
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, great. That's theater 11. Oh yeah, totally. And you're like, what
Like,
do you
they're
mean?
not even writing it down. They're like, yeah, huh, uh-huh. Yeah, you want some popcorn? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a fucking
And
hot dog.
meanwhile, I was at, so to give nods in the other direction, I was at AMC with my mom, and there was a movie where the image quality was flickering slightly, not a ton, like like
Was this Thor or
visual.
Top Gun?
This was Thor, I think,
Mm.
and what it was like, so like you measure the brightness in lumens, right? That's
Yep.
the scale. It was probably like a 5 lumen drop. Like it would, so it almost felt like somebody was turning the dial very lightly. And what it was is, I went out and I was like, hey, just to let you know, it seems like the image quality is good, but there's a little dropout of the lighting. It seems to be getting darker and then coming back on. And when I talked to them, I mentioned it to one of the people working concessions because that was the first person I saw. And this was at an AMC. And then, like 5 minutes later, the manager came in and was like, "Yeah, we just noticed it this morning. We need to replace the bulb, but it's the only theater that's playing the movie that you want to see, and we
Mm.
can't replace the bulb until we close tonight."
Mm.
And then she handed me 2 vouchers and said, like, "I'm really
Nice.
sorry for this experience." And like, my mom was
Customer
just
service.
yeah, but my mom was just like, what did you notice?" I'm like, "Well, did you notice that it's sort of dimming a little?" And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, it didn't, yeah." And I was like, "Well, I was just letting them know, like, the experience isn't what I think they want it to be, but
Yeah.
also like maybe they should take a look at their projector if it's something that could cause damage, or let them know, like, you may want to think about this." And they were like, "No, no, we noticed it this morning when we ran a test and we didn't have enough time to replace the bulb." And I was like, it's cool that you know that. Like, that
Yeah.
means you actually check your theaters, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
So that's
Well
been
done, AMC. Well
yeah.
done, AMC. Fuck you, Regal.
When we get to our
Re-
main review, I'll give a little nod to our friends over at Cinemark. The
yeah.
experience was really great. So just a
Oh
little
yeah.
preview.
Remind me to talk about my experience as well
Yeah.
when in our main review. But before we get to that, we've got a couple more television things to
Yep.
talk about. Maybe we'll speed it up a little bit. But I just watched. So this week on Prime Video, they just released an entire season of this new show that is a co-production with the BBC called The English, which is written and directed by Hugo Blick, who is a British man, but it stars and is executive produced or produced by Miss Emily Blunt. Holy shit, dude! I fucking love this show. That's
Wow.
all. I mean, I literally watched this show standing up. That's how much I loved it. The cinema. So the quick elevator pitches. This kind of this English woman comes to. This takes place during like the early days of American civilization, as far as white people coming and taking over our land. This is post Civil War. So she's and the frontier is being like taken over by land settlers and everything like that. It's called the English because, from a perspective of the indigenous people that lived here, it didn't matter where you came from. You were just the English. You were just the English coming over. So that's kind of where the title comes from. We follow Emily Blunt, who is coming over on a revenge. She's on a journey of revenge because the the man who killed her son is now in America, and she has come to kill him. On that, and then at the same time, we meet a retired soldier who is Pawnee, I believe. Yes, I think he's Pawnee. So he's from the Pawnee Nation. He's played by an actor. I hope I can get his name correct. Chaske Spencer is his name. You might remember him. He was like the oldest wolf dude in Twilight when Twilight had the wolves who were some were indigenous, some were not indigenous. But he's like an ex scout for the U.S. Army, and he's retired now, and he just wants to kind of go up north, get a couple acres, and be by himself. In the start of this show, there's like one soldier, I think it's in the trailer, who's like, when you were with us, you were one of us, but now that you're leaving the army, you're one of them, and get ready for a lot of racism and stuff. And the show is fucking beautiful. They filmed out, I think, in Oklahoma or something. There's so many shots where it's just beautiful landscapes, and then like maybe you see like two horses in the distance going across the entire screen. So it gives you that scope that like this is the frontier. There is nothing here. And when Emily Blunt and Chaske Spencer finally meet up, they have incredible chemistry. They have a really great dynamic. And it's a brutal show. It kind of shows how terrible white people were to indigenous people, but also like to just like it also just shows how like like the term the Wild West, I would say relates more to like the terrible things that white settlers would do to people,
Yeah.
not just the indigenous ones, but to them like other white people. Um, and it's 6 issues. I literally watched them all in one day straight through, and I could not wait to I could not wait for like the algorithm to go like the countdown to the next episode. I would literally click it I would have the remote sitting on the table just so I can hit the button to watch it, to engage the next episode. Um, it's like a sad story. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
All the characters are really complex. I mean, just like if we take into consideration like Chaske Spencer's character, Eli Whip, he's an indigenous man from the Pawnee Nation who can't go back to his own nation because he's betrayed them. He's killed, and he himself has killed, and he's seen other American soldiers kill indigenous people. He like no nation likes him. Like he actually, there's a point in the story where Emily Blunt and him are talking, and he's like, no, this nation hates me, this nation hates me, this nation hates me, can't go to this nation, hate me. And she's like, well, why? He's like, well, some things are, some because of old wounds and some because of new wounds. And he's just like, he says so little, but he's saying so much.
Yeah.
He's so good. Like for me, like the only thing that I was like worried about watching this movie, I was like, this is such an awesome interpretation. I hope they're doing it. I hope they are interpreting and representing indigenous people correctly.
Yeah.
So that's like my only question about the show, because it's just so goddamn good.
Yep.
But and when it comes down to it, this all falls on the shoulders of Emily Blunt. Like she's the driving force in this show.
Yep.
And like, like she's done a couple things recently where I'm like, cool, you got a really good paycheck. Like, like Jungle Cruise is a piece of shit movie. And like, she's great in it. And I didn't really care for, like the new Mary Poppins, but she was great in it. But this movie, like, she's incredible. She gets a chance to like really show like everything she can do. She's a badass. She's, like, she's a mourning mother. And you think everything that's happening from what they're presenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I read some reviews saying it's like there are some plot lines that like confuse everything. I disagree. I think if you're just like ingesting it and like you going along with it, you're like, oh man, this all makes complete sense. And what they did was really interesting, and it throws you for a loop and stuff. And yeah, there are things that like you don't find out till much later, and then it just makes everything more tragic or more beautiful.
Yeah.
So I can't stress how much, like, this is all from my first watching. I hope that I have the same experience second time around, you know.
Yeah.
But at least from first watch, I was blown the fuck away. It was so fucking good.
It was fun. I saw the trailer for this week, and I watched it and showed it to my wife, and I was like, "This seems like the kind of show I might like." But I also, watching the trailer, was like, "Oh, this is a show that my wife's not going to like. It's too intense for the type of show that it's not the type of show that she goes into for fun."
Yeah.
And she always says like, can we watch something that has some humor, funny? Because everything I'm watching is so intense, and that's just sort of what I lean towards. So this is kind of like catnip. Like Emily Blunt post Edge of Tomorrow has made some really interesting, like, but Edge of Tomorrow is such an interesting flip for her, in my opinion, where she
I love
got
that
to
movie.
embrace her physicality, got to
Mhm.
embrace like being a character that holds her feelings close to her vest and doesn't let things out. And then we see through her interactions with Tom Cruise's character the why. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things about that movie that people don't talk a ton about, but like her vulnerability over time, because he gets to know her because they've done this 1,000 times, right? You can see the affection that he has for her, but like she starts to slowly erode her the wall she's put up around her, the more times that they end up in this familiarity, right? Like
Mhm.
and he's in love with her by the end, and she doesn't realize how many times they've done this, until the scene where he gets her coffee,
Mhm.
where the helicopter is, and I love that. And he immediately grabs like two sugars, and like and he's like, "Oh right, you like two sugars," and like he finally slips. I feel like, and lets her know like this has been 1,000 times or something like that. Like,
Mhm.
but I think her physicality, her ability to play characters that are way more complex and have a lot more internal conflict and strife, really for me started with that movie for her. So that's what I was hoping to hear, is like she's bringing a lot of that version of what she does to the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I could kind of compare this to, just because they're both westerns, maybe, and they're both gritty, is like Deadwood. But this is like, I mean, to me, it's like it's not as long form
Yeah.
as, like, there will not be another season of this. This is like a moment in time. This is
Yeah.
like something, and I think the BBC does that a lot, where it's like we're just going to put out a story, and we don't
Yeah.
need to tell more stories. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, like this is like, to me, it's like a shorter form Deadwood esque, but to me more thoughtful.
Yeah.
And like you're not trying to jam as many characters like they did with Deadwood.
Yep.
Although I did love that show. It's just so goddamn good. And again, I feel like the representation is really incredible in this, especially Chuske Spencer does an incredible job. But there are other Indigenous actors in this. Anyone who is any character that is Indigenous is played by an Indigenous character, and I think that's really important, and I think that's really great.
Yeah.
And like Reservation Dogs, like I almost sense like there's almost like a groundswell of Indigenous stories happening, and I hope it continues. So
Yeah. Cool. Let's jump over really quick. White Lotus. We caught up on the next two episodes, so we're actually current at this point. I think there's some amazing work being done in this show at all levels. This is one of those that I'm glad that television supports the idea of ensemble awards a little bit more, because this is a show that they're gonna flood the zone for Emmy nominations, in my opinion,
mm,
and really all the way from like smaller roles up to the people who are a little bit, the stories anchor around. Everybody's
hmm
great. I think the really shining, watching Michael Imperioli sort of reckon with, and I called it a little bit earlier in the show. He was caught. He's with his father and his son at this. So it's a 3 generation trip back to Sicily. The F. Murray Abraham's character, the claim is that they're from Sicily, so they're going back. And Michael Imperioli is there, and his wife's not there, and neither is his daughter. And there's allusions to the fact that like he's done something wrong. And I was like, this feels like it's out of his control. Like he's trying, the way the character's being played, and by the second episode, he admits that he has like a sex addiction, and it's really messing his life up. And he coming here, he had hired two women. He had hired one woman to be with him all week as his girlfriend. And she ends up like really complicating his life, is the way I would put it. In but that's another amazing nod to like Simona Tabasco, who's playing Lucia. Like she's the local, right, who is the sex worker, and every time you see her on camera, I said this to my wife, like she just feels like, you know, an unbridled id. Like everything about her is like, I'm drinking, we're having sex. I mean, but like her way she carries herself, the way she walks through every room, she has a presence that I wasn't expecting. And then she gets validated because Michael Imperioli gets in a fight with the manager of the hotel and says, "These women are staying with me." And she's like, "We can only have one woman, one other person on your hotel reservation. Otherwise, we have to charge you more because the room was for two people." And then he's like, "Just put her on my son's room." And he's like, "She's gonna sleep in your son's bed." And he's like, "They're not going to sleep here. They're going to come and go." And she's like, "Oh, so they're going to come and go?" And like, but there's all amazing like banter between the manager, who's unbelievable, who plays Valentina. Sabrina Impacciatori is the like probably 40 somethings Italian woman who everything runs through at the hotel, just like in the first season with Murray, right? Like you have this sort of anchor character that is a representative of the resort. And but her interactions with Mike, with everybody, are unbelievable. She's like gruff and bristles at everything that's going on, and she kept throwing the girls out, like, because this is a high-end resort, like, get out of here, like, you local trash. And then Michael Imperioli's character like literally has to come to the desk and be like, "Listen, they're with me, they're my friends." And she like has to give in, but it's very uncomfortable watching her kind of grill him, but also have to be hospitality. That scene is really great when they're doing scenes from this show when it gets nominated. Obviously, that will probably be one of the scenes. I can't imagine watching him in his like very laid back Michael Imperioli communication style have to reckon with like, I'm telling you to put these sex workers on my room, and you're slowing me down and having me explain it to you. He just, the level of like confusion and also deliberate, like she says something at one point and he just kind of like looks at her like, come on, right? Like, why are we doing this? Like, knock it off. There's so much subtlety in his acting at the desk. And he's so great anyway, but he's playing this character that is very like the way he communicates, that like lean back, very like, all the time. And those scenes are fun, like watching him have to reckon with a very type A personality, right? Like it harkens back to his time on Sopranos when like he would go toe to toe with Tony, and they would have these like, you know, Tony's like screaming at him and he's just like, what are you doing this for? Like, you know. And
I feel like we haven't seen him much. I don't know what else he's been doing as far as acting or producing or directing or anything like that. I feel like he was building a theater in New York at some point, like a small downtown theater during The Sopranos or something. But I'm glad to see he's back on the small screen.
Yeah, I think the last thing is like, again, I'm giving nods to the woman who's playing Lucia, but her friend is Maya, is played by Beatrice Grano, and she's great. Like her innocence compared to her friend, like she has this. Seeing the two of them together is like an angel and a devil. Like when you get that feeling from the two, so it's perfect because like, you know, Lucia is this like brunette and Mia is like a blonde, like a dirty blonde. And the way they dress is slightly different. Like Lucia plays a little bit more off of her physicality. Mia plays a little bit more off of like elegance and a little more subtle. So just seeing them sit at the bar, right? Just seeing them interact with people is really fun, you know. And the last episode was is called the Bull Elephants, and it's describing the fact that the bull elephants get run out of the pack. One of the characters describes that, right? And she's like, "I'm sad. I'm glad I'm not a man. Like, I feel like, you know, men have to deal with this. They don't have any friendships. They don't have any, and then you cut to all these sequences where men are together, like, and you now have that lens of like that they're not actually connected, right? Like that it's performative almost, you know. So I think, Mike White is no surprise here. Mike White wrote an amazing show, but there's an amazing amount of subtlety in the scripts and the way that he's alluding to why people are the way they are. And I highly suggest it. I know that this is one you're not currently watching, but I do think if you want to wait until it's all over, it would be an amazing 10-hour screen.
Yeah, I feel like that might be where we go. Like, because my wife, I think, watched when I was away out doing a show. She watched the first White Lotus season. She really enjoyed it. So I think, if anything, because the show is kind of a different story every season, we might pick this up.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done.
Let's jump over to Andor. At one point I was talking about the fact that I was thinking of holding off and not watching them in arcs. And I can say definitively, I'm glad I didn't. I think this is the best show on television right now. It's not the best Star Wars show. It's not the best. I think this is the best show on television.
Wow, man. That's a huge statement.
I between the writing and the acting and the storytelling that is being done by the actors, by the directors, it feels like this is very much a show that people talk about. Like when you see editing, when you notice editing, it's either good or bad, right? Like when the idea that like you don't pay attention to the score unless it's bad or it's really impacting the story. This is one of those things where like the directing, the production design, right? Like the things that we just expect to not think about are so well thought out. Like, in this episode, One Way Out, which is episode 10, this is the prison break. And the thing I think I really loved is the subtlety of some of the things. When the prisoners run past the boots, you assume they're going to grab the boots, right? But the reality is all the electrified floors are shut down because they broke it. Right. So there's no need, but there's still a lingering shot on the boots as people are running by them. And they were so important 2 episodes ago. Right. But like, it was almost like a red herring for us. Like they don't need those boots. Right. Like, but yet when they go and they get out and they swim away, they're walking on snowy, what would have been great? Boots. Right. Like, so there's just little things like that I think are so also like looking down on the prison. Right, it looks like an imperial cop.
Yeah, the sigil of the empire.
Yeah. I just think that again, these are where like everything is thought out and nothing feels like it's beating you over the head. But you get the moment where Luthen gives his speech, right, and it's done on purpose. He's got a black billowing cloak that he's wearing, and he's sort of lit more like Vader than he is like Yoda, right? Like if we're going to talk in the Star Wars ecosystem, and that's unbelievable because he's the shades of gray, right? Like so is Cassian, but Luthen he's leading this rebellion quietly from behind. But you realize that like it's the same problem you have with like Saul Guerrero. Like Saul is not black or white; he's gray. You can see why he is the way that he is because of the life that he's lived, and Luthen, the question of like, what have you given up? And the speech he gives is like Stellan Skarsgård that's going to be in his, like when Stellan Skarsgård gets a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Oscars, that's going to be one of the things they bring to the table. It's one of the most powerful speeches that, and then we can go back to the other big speech, which is there's one way out, like, we all have to rise and climb that you get from from Andy Serkis, from Kino Loy. The Cassian recognizes that it has to be Kino that tells everybody, right? Like the shorthand of like, these are your people. They all believe in you, right? Like I might be the spark that got you to do this, but like you have to be the voice. And the fact that they keep cutting back and forth from the room where you can hear him saying it without it being distorted to the voice of God that everybody's hearing, that's being distorted so it matches what the guards were saying the whole time, is powerful. Like the emotion on Andy Serkis's face. The other thing I heard from one of the podcasts was the director and Andy Serkis worked on the speech, and there was a lot of question about how they were going to shoot it. And a scene like that, I think they would often just shoot his pickups where you would only cut back to him and he would say like the line around what he's saying, one line before, one line after. And he actually gave that speech like 40 times while they were shooting it.
Mm.
because they wanted to have the momentum, right? Because it starts off as he's unsure, right, but he knows he's doing the right thing, and by the end of it, you cannot not be swept up in this emotion that like we are rebelling and today's the day. And I feel like it comes across like Andy Serkis is a great actor, but like giving him the opportunity to give him a speech like this where he can like they hammered it, like they shot it like 40 times so that he could build the momentum and he can figure out where the important pieces. It's just epic storytelling done on a small screen.
Yeah, I think this is the episode that they submit for your consideration
Yeah,
for best supporting actor for Andy Serkis. Yeah, he's like this. I think this is the like I was really kind of like interested and moved by what he was doing in the previous episodes, but he really brought it in this episode, and you're like, oh my god! And then after all that, to see that, I mean, I don't know if we should spoil it, but I mean, to see where that character goes,
yeah,
it's it's tragic. I thought I was really like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
um, that's really where that's really where we're gonna to leave this character is was really tragic.
yeah.
So
I'm so impressed with this show. I'm hopeful that they can keep the quality where it is for the next season.
I feel like as long as Disney keeps out of the creative's way, but
Yeah.
keeps writing those checks, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
originally this was pitched as a 4-season show, and now I think it's down to 2 seasons. This one
yes,
takes place over a year, the next one takes place over 4 years.
yeah,
And
leading to
I
Rogue
think,
One. Yeah,
yeah, I think what's interesting about that is we're gonna have to do some time skipping in the next series, the next
which is
season of
kind
this.
which I think will adhere to kind of what you were saying with 3-story arcs,
Yeah,
if that's so.
my guess is it's gonna feel like 3 small movies, even more like the beginning of this season is what I expect the next season to feel like.
Yeah,
This just felt like we were dropped into the middle of like maybe one of the most amazing episodes of television this entire season, and I just kept looking around like who's doing what where and how are they telling this story and why am I being so moved? Like Luthen's
mm,
speech is one of the most amazing things that is coming from a character that you are not as emotionally invested in, and he brings the power, like the hammer he drops in that speech is unbelievable.
yeah,
And I love the fact that he's like, you don't think about you don't even worry about me, and he's like, I think about you every day, right? Like this is what's in Luthen's head is who's dying to help me, what pieces are on the chessboard, right? He has
hmm
to reckon with the fact that he's going to let 50 people get killed in order because it's more important to keep a double agent inside than to act on the information he was just given. Because if he saves those 50 people, he's likely going to out the person who's a double agent, right? Like, how would he have this information?
hmm
And that's just sort of day to day, A plus B equals C that Luthen has to go through. He has
yeah,
to be okay with making the choice that 50 people can die because it's more important for him to have a double agent. And you finally get to see the impact that it's having on him as a person in that speech.
yeah.
And
It's
I
good
think it's
stuff.
great. Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
jump over to Tulsa King. You seemed very excited about this when we were in our pre-show.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I didn't watch a lot of television this week, but the fact that like I watched the English and I got to watch the first, I got to get in the first episode of Tulsa King before we recorded was super excited for me. Tulsa King, for those of you who don't know, is another television show spearheaded by Taylor Sheridan, and if you don't know who Taylor Sheridan is, um, he wrote and directed, or he wrote Sicario, which was I really enjoyed that film. He wrote Hell or High Water, which was a really awesome film. He also did some work on Sons of Anarchy, and he's had this kind of like really awesome streak with. I think they're all on Paramount Plus, but I could be wrong. But like this guy's knocking it out of the park with things like Yellowstone, starring Kevin Costner. Um, and then there's a companion show to that, I think, called 1883, which takes is like kind of like a prequel or whatever. He also has the show that Jeremy Renner stars in called Mayor of Kingstown. he's doing a lot of work, and he's kind of, I feel like he's an actor, director, writer, producer. But I think he's reached the kind of the table of like, like the folks that just like not like, I mean, I don't know if he, I mean, maybe Ryan Murphy's like status where like it's like, oh, that dude, yeah, we'll do anything he does. Um, but that being said, his newest show is called Tulsa King, starring the Mister the Mister Rocky Balboa, the Mister John Rambo, the Mister um, Sylvester Stallone. So this is Sylvester
You
Stallone's first.
forgot to mention Samaritan. I mean,
Oh,
come on.
I mean, you know, my bad. Which is one of our, isn't that, is Samaritan one of our more listened to episodes? Isn't it?
It's a really interesting one. I think it's probably like top third. Boy, I don't know what you people listen to sometimes. Yeah,
What do you mean,
I
you
question.
people?
You
Anyway,
fans of this podcast, the ones you choose to listen to more than others really blow my mind.
well, yeah. So we've got Sylvester Stallone doing his first foray into episodic television ever, and he's amazing in this show. So Tulsa King is about um, Sylvester Stallone, who um, he's part of the mafia uh, in New York City, and he goes to jail for 25 years because he kept his mouth shut and he didn't snitch or anything like that. So he's after 25 years, he's gotten out, and the family, instead of kind of like welcoming him back in, they're like, we're shipping you off to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because it's no, like, there's no, we don't have anybody out there, and it's a brand new territory, and you're gonna set it up for us. So you've got this Italian gangster who's been in captivity for 25 years and doesn't know what like an iPhone is, and there's and things like that. And it's a bit of a fish out of water story, but it's also like he's gonna fall upward.
Yep.
I've only seen the first episode because I think the first episode's the only one available on Paramount Plus.
Hmm.
I mean, Stallone is incredible. I love Sylvester Stallone, and like I like the Expendable movies. Like they're very much like just rewatchable in the background after a while. Um, but like Taylor Sheridan is like, I'm gonna like, he is doing this on behalf and to honor Sylvester Stallone, in my opinion. Like it's just like the writing for him is so great. He's not. He's just like just the right amount of like Italian mafia boss, but also like, he's just like a guy. He's like a guy out of time from New York, where like he respects everybody as long as they don't fuck with him and fuck with his money, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So uh, he's doing a really great job, and the idea of a fish out of water in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like, for the in the first episode, he goes to Tulsa. He's figuring things out, and he goes to a dispensary because he's like, wait, like marijuana is legal now, and he does, like it's like a foreign idea for him, and he
Yeah.
shakes down a dispensary, and he's like, I'm your protection now, and he's like, who are you protecting me from? Like it's legal now. Um, so it's really interested. I'm very interested um, to see where this goes. I the feeling I got, I was like, cool. This is destination television for me. Like I will be very excited every week to be like, oh, Tulsa King's on. There's a new episode. And also, like, I honestly think this will sell subscriptions to Paramount Plus. They're very smart in not releasing this all at once and
Yep.
making people come back and like actually subscribe and not cancel a subscription after the first free week. Because I do think that this will sell subscriptions even more so than Yellowstone. Because I don't wait. I actually don't. I don't watch Yellowstone, but I don't know if it's on Paramount Plus.
There's some weird wackiness where I think you have to wait a day, and not all the episodes are on there. So like it might
Mhm.
only be the current episode. There's some like serious whack thing having to do with the rights of that show specifically.
Yellowstone?
Yeah,
Gotcha. But like they were kind of, I think Paramount Plus was kind of sitting on the shoulders of like Star Trek and like the Star Trek shows.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, that did sell subscriptions, but and I like Star Trek and I like Tulsa King, but I feel like not everyone does. So I
yeah.
think that the demographic that doesn't like Star Trek but might like something like The Sopranos, something
Mhm.
like Breaking Bad, like those kinds of shows, will this will sell subscriptions.
Yeah. Um, let's jump over to films. The one I want to really talk about this week, I finally broke down and subscribed to AMC Plus because I'm tired of listening to people talk about the interview with the vampire television show and not watching it. It's a show, I'm very interested in it. I haven't yet gotten a chance to dive in, but when you subscribe to AMC Plus, you also get access to IFC films. You get the Sundance Channel. You get Shudder. They're all bundled under one umbrella with AMC Plus.
Mhm.
So I was really excited because the IFC Films umbrella is one that I'm always interested to see what they've purchased. And there's a film on there that I watched this week called Shithouse, which is Cooper Raif's debut film where he wrote and directed and acted in it.
Mhm.
If you've seen Cha Cha Real Smooth on Apple TV Plus, that is a second film that he wrote and directed and acted in. So this film was supposed to go and debut at South by Southwest in 2020. And then the film, because of COVID, it was canceled. The entire festival was canceled that year. And IFC Films purchased this for distribution. And it was sort of like an indie darling. Like people were really excited to see this. They thought it was something unique. It's the story of a freshman in college who's now sort of left the nest and having a bad time is really the way I
Mhm.
would put it. And Cooper Rafe plays this sort of awkward, uncomfortable freshman who has a roommate who is a lacrosse player, who is sort of a party guy, and they don't get along. They're very different from one another. And he ends up eventually talking to the girl who's the RA on the floor because he forgets his keys when he goes to take a shower. So he's awkwardly in the hallway wearing a towel and as like, "Hi, you're an RA, right?" And like she lets him into his room. And then later that same night, bad things happen with his roommate, and like he passes out, and he decides he doesn't want to be in the room, so he goes and he's going to sleep on the couch in the shared area. And she comes down and starts talking to him, and then this relationship evolves between the two of them. There's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of like uncomfortable, really uncomfortable scenes. But I feel like I never got to go away to college. I was a person who went to college while living at home, so I didn't have that experience of living in the dorms. I didn't have the experience of being so isolated from my previous life. And this is all of the scary aspects of being an emotional, empathetic person who is now completely outside their comfort zone. And
Mhm.
Cooper Rafe is brutal in his ability to be vulnerable and also kind of a jerk because he doesn't know how to deal with his feelings. It is a very emotional and moving movie for the right people, I think. And I really was looking forward to seeing this, and I'm so glad that it was one of the first things I spotted when I paid for a year of AMC Plus. So I
Cool.
would suggest it. I think what's really interesting is if you read a little bit about it, the woman who plays the RA was his girlfriend at the time. So like this film cost $15,000 for him to shoot. It's so like guerrilla filmmaking. It
Mhm.
feels inspired by the Richard Linkletters and the Kevin Smiths, right? Like that. Like let's just make an independent film about people, feelings, and their emotions and talking. And that's what it
Mhm.
is. Like it's really the title of the film comes from there's a one of the fraternities has a house that everybody's dubbed shit house, and
Right.
there's a party
Gotcha.
there. So it's an interesting choice. It was also released in Europe under the title The Freshman or Freshman Year, because Shithouse makes for a pretty tough title to type out on your marketing material.
Well, it's still hard. I mean, even in America, I think like
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
really
They decided
over.
to stick with it, which I'm really. Everybody thought it was going to get retitled when it got distribution, but the IFC Films just struck through it. So it's still shithouse with a whole bunch of symbols, but it works. If you are a person who happens to be a broken, empathetic boy who in a man's body, boy, is this
Jeez,
movie going to make
right.
you sad. But
Damn, that's
great.
very specific.
I think I'm definitely at times I feel like an overgrown 12-year-old in a 47-year-old man's body, and I
Mm,
could absolutely channel the feelings that he was going through at times, and also
yeah,
cringe for watching him do the wrong thing. And
sure.
um, I love the idea of a writer director, like the full auteur experience, and it being a little autobiographical. So I'm hopeful to watch this week Armageddon Time, which is James Gray's new film, and
Mm,
it's autobiographical. And somebody was just like, well, the kid who's supposed to be you, in one of the interviews I listened to, they were like, he's kind of not great. And he's like, well, everybody who knows me knows I'm an asshole. If I wrote an autobiographical film about me and I wasn't an asshole, that would be terrible. Like, you got to be honest, right? If I chose to tell
mhm,
a story about me, I got to be about me, which I really loved. And I think Cooper Rafe spends a lot of time writing characters that are probably inspired by his personality a little bit, but also isn't afraid to be the sort of uh, the uncomfortable character in a scene. And
mm,
it must be really interesting to work on these films with him. His second film is Cha Cha Real Smooth, which casts Dakota Johnson as the mom of a girl at a bat mitzvah party, and he's a bat mitzvah party starter, basically. And I'm very interested to watch it. I've been interested to watch it from the very beginning when I saw the first trailer, but after watching Shithouse, I can't wait to see what that film does, and watch him sort of get to work with an amazing actress like a Dakota Johnson. And the ongoing joke I have is like, yeah, if you were like a 23-year-old man and you were going to cast a woman that might fall in love with you, and Dakota Johnson was available, we would be like, yeah, I'm going to write that film. But that from the outside, that's what it feels like. But I think the story he's telling seems very beautiful. It's about connection and about like the daughter accepting him as a person who could be a friend.
mm.
And that's the story I think we're heading into in Cha Cha Real Smooth. So probably this week, if I have the time, I will add that to my queue to try to get taken care of. Let's jump over to your Christmas corner, my friend.
Guys, this week in John's corner, continuing on the um, Hallmark Channel marriage between Hallmark Channel and Peacock. I watched "We Wish You a Married Christmas," and when I was trying to get links to put in the show notes, I couldn't find this on Peacock anymore. So I don't know if they took it down for some reason on Peacock, and then so I gave you a link to the Hallmark Channel version of it. Maybe it's I don't know what the situation is. Um, but I really, really enjoyed this movie for a number of reasons. The production value is really incredible. It's the story of a married couple who are both very successful people in New York City, and they've just kind of gotten wrapped up in their own work, and their marriage is suffering, their communication is suffering, they're going to therapy, but they're sitting on far ends of the same couch when they're talking to their therapist. um, and the therapist encourages them to go up to a small town and check into a little inn, and kind of just spend a weekend, rekindling what they had, getting to know each other. And unfortunately, there's some automotive problems that happen, and they get trapped up there for all of Christmas. Um, and they get to experience the town. They get to participate in the fun things that are happening in the town. They interact with some really cool folks, some really interesting characters in the town as well, and they get to know each other again. And the reason I really really liked this movie is like it wasn't like candy coating anything. These were actually people who were like, I didn't know that you didn't know this about me, or I haven't done this in months and you don't notice. And he's like, well, it's not that I didn't notice. It's, and they were just like, I feel like this was written from a really truthful place. And, um, like married couples don't get along all the time. And these moments of, lack of communication do happen. And I think they were I don't think it seemed to me that they were treating it with, honesty and not trying to like milk the Christmas season and just like kind of make a movie that like they're like, oh, quick, just like throw a dart at a bunch of words. Okay, so we've got like married couple, town, this, that. Like they were actually like genuinely like trying to write a really smart, endearing story about two people who weren't communicating, and it really moved me. I was really impressed by this, and not only that, it's like I don't know if like within, like most of the movies I'm trying to watch for Christmas are like the 2022 Hallmark Channel movies. Most of them, the production value is like skyrocketed. Like it's like super high definition, super crisp. The production value is really good. The acting quality is fantastic. Um, and I think when you fall back to like a few years before, like people were just like, yeah, whatever, Christmas movies, we'll just make them whatever.
Yeah.
But they're really like taking them. They're like they're taking they're making them, and they're taking them seriously. And I think that's awesome. And I really enjoyed this one. I just think it's weird that all of a sudden this morning I couldn't find it on Peacock, so I don't know what happened to it. But if you go to hallmarkchannel.com, it'll tell you like when it's playing. I don't know if you can stream it off of the Hallmark Channel, but I think maybe if you have a cable provider, you can put in your information um, and maybe stream it from the Hallmark Channel. But it was really enjoyable.
That's cool. I mean, the idea that they're making these films that for a long time felt like they were just kind of throwaways and they're treating them a little more seriously, I think is something that's unique. I don't know that if you went back 10 years ago and started talking about these like, Hallmark channel-y Christmas films, that's why I sort of always roll my eyes about, Christmas film time, because it's like those films didn't feel like they were taken seriously. They felt like they were lowest common denominator. They didn't have like high production value. It was just a film to sort of make you feel emotional about the holidays, and that's great. It's like reading, a Harlequin romance novel, right? Like you're not reading this to get, Shakespeare. You're getting it because you want that type of story. And I think
most of them are on Harlequin novels,
yeah,
to be honest.
Right. And I think, the reality is that there's a place for that type of, that's why I think it's so interesting, to just loop back to Andor for a second is I feel like, what you're getting there is like the reason I think Andor is working so well is it works for both the highbrow and the lowbrow, those who are bought in and those who are not in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. That's what's working here for the first time, right? Like you're getting almost like Shakespeare level monologues. And then there's also the grittiness of like, we're gonna rebel by beating the crap out of the guards, right? Like you get both the shock value of the world that you're in, and also this like extremely well thought out why it's happening. Sometimes it's the how, sometimes it's the what. In this case, you're getting all of that and the why. And I think you're saying that in some of these films that you're seeing a well-sourced story that feels legitimate. As somebody who's gone to like, marriage therapy, it's those sessions are very uncomfortable, but like the way you're describing it sounds realistic. And I think that would often be played for laughs, and it doesn't sound like it was in this film, right? Like it is part of setting up the world and the characters and the stakes for this individual story, which I think is important,
Yeah, I think I think that it's a well crafted story where they do walk the line of like when are we trying to have some real levity here versus when can we lighten the mood to have to tell a joke and stuff. So I think they walk the line really well with this one. So yeah, I was like super impressed with it.
Cool. Let's jump over to our main review. So this week we watched Black Panther Wakanda Forever. John, would you like to run through it's a very long film, so how do we want to handle the plot of this film, and how far down the rabbit hole do you feel like we want to go with spoilers?
I just want to. I think we should just say it right off the bat. Like, if you're listening to this right now and you haven't seen the movie, like, just stop and go see the movie and
Yeah.
then come back. I think that it's like I don't. There's so much to process, and I don't know like where we're gonna go. But
Yeah.
I'd rather just say we're gonna spoil this movie right now, so we can kind of like not have to, um, kind of dance around things and just kind of like
Yeah.
speak
I think this is
from the heart and the mind, as it were.
This is
You know.
this is a film that I think would be very hard to do spoiler free, because even in the trailers they've given away a little bit, but they haven't given away like large portions of this. Like we know,
Yeah.
from the trailer, that Riri Williams is in it, and you see sort of Ironheart armor being created, right? Like,
Mhm.
but if you're not steeped in the Marvel law, that doesn't have any lore, that doesn't have any like say or impact on you. But
Yeah.
there's so many stories going on here that I think it would be very hard for us to tap dance around things that are important, I think, and what would resonate with you as an audience member. So I think we're just gloves off, everything's on the table. So now that we've made that decision, how do you want to handle the plot? Where do you want to go with this? Do you want to talk through the movie in sections? Do you want to, because I feel like there's a lot of ways we could tackle this, because it is 2 hours and 40 minutes, but
Yeah.
it's also there's a lot of road to hoe, as I often say in this film. Like they you get the introduction of one of the coolest bad guys, forget bad guy, anti-hero in a long
Mhm.
time, right? Like
Right.
I leaned over to my wife at one point and I was like, God, Black Adam wishes he was Namor. Like the tone that they hit with Namor, I think, is what they were trying to get with Black Adam. And I think it was so interesting to have them so close to one another. But yeah, so let's have you give it a shot. Where do you want to start with this plot?
Well, I mean, I think we should just start talking about the beginning. So,
Okay.
like we are dealing here with the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman, who was the Black Panther, T'Challa in the first one, and in between this movie, now for people who don't know, he was dying of cancer as he was filming the
Yeah.
first Black Panther.
Yeah, he had
He didn't
colon
tell anybody.
cancer. Yeah, he had
Yeah,
colon cancer. Yep.
he didn't tell anybody, and he continued to suffer in silence during this movie and all the other subsequent movies until his passing. Um,
Have you seen the
but
video? One of my favorite Chadwick Boseman moments in all of his interviews of all time is after Infinity War, when he fades, when he's dusted, and
mhm,
somebody's just like, "Are you going to come back and be there for Black Panther 2?" And he's like, "I'm dead."
yeah,
And
yeah,
you're like, I don't know if he knew where how advanced things were, or like there's an interesting moment where you're like, there's a lot of reality in the emotion, I feel like, of the actors in this film.
mhm,
The opening
yeah.
sequence, you're like, is Angela Bassett crying, or is his
Well,
mother crying, right? Like,
there. I mean, the answer is both. I
yeah.
mean, and I think that Ryan Coogler didn't know where they were going to go, and once he figured out how to honor Chadwick Boseman's memory and continue on with the story, a lot of those actors didn't want to come back, and he personally reached out to them and said, like, this is how we're going to approach it. I think it's really smart that they vaguely address his passing very quickly within the first few minutes of it, but also set up the movie where his presence is felt throughout the entire film from
Yes.
beginning to end. And I think that that's very important. But unfortunately, like as the movie starts, they're dealing with Chadwick is in critical condition, and his sister is trying to replicate the Wakandan flower herb that gives,
The heart shaped flower. Yeah.
yeah, that gives Black Panther kind of his superpowers, kind of like the superhero soldier for Captain America. And she gets really close, and then unfortunately, he passes away, and we see a really beautiful celebration of his life, and honestly, it's the celebration of Chadwick Boseman's life just as it is um, of T'Challa's life. Yes, like this is a fictional story, but we're also celebrating the life of someone who meant a lot to a lot of people, and I think that there was like a sense when I was watching it as well, um, of finally having a little bit of closure. Um, with his passing, and because like yeah, it kind of it was really really intense to
Yeah.
start a movie off that way.
I
Um,
think that that's one thing I would note is I've listened to a couple of reviews now also, and this is a movie that Black Panther was sort of a celebration and exposing us to Wakanda and the this beautiful culture that is not spoiled from the outside and is a leader in technology, and now we're stepping in, we already have that knowledge, and now you're stepping into the shadow and the celebration and mourning of T'Challa. It's a hard starting point, I think, for a fun comic book film, right? They
mm,
had to approach this. There had to be some way to acknowledge everything that was going on. I think it was done beautifully,
yeah.
but it sets you into a very different mindset than most of these comic book films in general. Like the Marvel Studios logo being nothing but Chadwick Boseman
Mhm.
was also really nice. Like it gave
Yeah, absolutely.
he's there, right? Like this movie
Mhm.
wouldn't have existed without him. And
Yeah,
his place in the Marvel universe is so important that they decided they were not going to recast him, right? Like
yeah,
that's an important aspect of, I think, the storytelling that's going on here, and that Marvel and Ryan Coogler were able to sort of land that punch at the beginning of the way that Ryan Coogler is telling the story, and then the buy-in for Marvel Studios to do an entire logo sequence where every letter, right, that is normally filled out with the Avengers, it's all Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. You know,
yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty
It
amazing.
was yeah, and also I think it happens twice in the film, but there are, for all intents and purposes, there are moments of silence,
Mhm.
like when the Marvel Studios logo occurs, you do hear kind of like the sound of wind blowing, but for the most part, it's an opportunity for you to have a moment of silence and kind of really reflect on the impact of this character, this impact of this actor,
Yeah,
um, on the zeitgeist. So
yeah,
that's a really intense way to start a movie, and then you kind of move into um, 1 year later. Now Angela Bassett, T'Challa's mother. I don't remember the character's name off the top of my head.
Ramona, Queen Ramona, Ramonda.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Queen Ramonda is now remounted onto the throne, and we're dealing with her talking to like the United Nations, or yeah, it's the United Nations. It's in
Yeah,
Geneva, and they're like, well, why don't you share your, why aren't you sharing the vibranium? And they're like, well, we are we're not scared of sharing our vibranium. We're scared of the people that we're scared of the people that we share it with. And
right.
instantaneously at the same time, there's an there's like an outreach, Wakandan outreach research center that gets that mercenaries break into to try to steal vibranium. So a lot of this movie it's really interesting. Um, a lot of this movie is about people like big superpowers want the superpower of vibranium, and
Yeah,
Wakanda is not willing to give that up, and rightly so. Um, but they find but the idea is that all of a sudden, Wakanda thinks that they're the only ones with vibranium, but then somehow the Americans have built this vibranium detector that has detected a vein of vibranium underwater.
yeah,
So now there's all this. Now they want to, like, they're like sending people down to try to find it, to try to dig for it, and that's kind of where we start getting introduced to Namor and the Talokan. In the comic book, this would be Atlantis, but we are going in a different direction.
yep,
And so Namor is now this, the first mutant in Marvel Comics, and I get not really. I mean, the first official mutant in Marvel movies. He even says so in the movie, and he's
yep,
trying to protect Talokan, which is his people and his city.
yep,
Um, and he like he kind of forces Wakanda to help him in a way.
yeah,
Um, And I don't know. You want to take it from here?
Yeah, I think so. The introduction, it's sort of shot like a horror film, like a character is snatched away and you're left with just wires, and you don't understand what's happening. And then all of a sudden,
All
there's
underwater. Yeah.
yeah, and so Lake Bell is playing a character. She's a great actress. I had heard through one of the podcasts that she may have been a character that was supposed to return in the post credit sequence and talk to the person that was actually doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. It was surprising to have a Lake Bell quality actress appear and disappear within 5 minutes being in this film. Like, I recognized her immediately, and I think she's had such an impact on pop culture television over the years, and she's such a unique presence that like her calm in that sequence is really unbelievable. She immediately realizes you hear like sirens, like sound is causing an issue, and it's basically like the siren song of the mermaids, right? Like people are walking off the ship into the water, and she immediately figures it out what's going on, and she's like, we need to get her earplugs. Like, she's obviously something more was going on with that character than I think just a scientist, right? And I think it's a cool introduction to seeing these characters and bringing them in. We don't really get to see Namor at that point, right? Like the introduction of him is a little bit more further along when he infiltrates Wakanda and comes out of the water. I think we've seen a silhouette at that point, but you actually get to see him like walk out of the water inside of Wakanda. So he's made it through their world, into their world. No one's ever been able to do this. And he just walks up to talk to the Queen and Shuri, who are trying to mourn. The Queen is trying to get Shuri to acknowledge that she needs to mourn, and they're burning the clothing that they wore at the funeral.
Yeah,
to have closure. And that scene is really powerful because also while he's talking, you don't see it, but all of his people from Talakan have done something behind Shuri and Queen Ramonda. They've like quietly without you noticing. So there's some really amazing like setup for what feels a little like horror-esque. I think that's the thing that I was surprised by is I didn't expect that this character would be introduced. He's such a charismatic and big presence, but the way that they introduce the people is a little horror-like, and that was a surprise to me. I will say, up to this point, I really liked everything that's going on here. I think I ended up really starting to hit up against some problems from my perspective. The introduction of Riri Williams as a character, I was excited to see her show up because I know who she is, but I felt like this was just this movie had a lot to do, and I feel like this is where it started to get a little messy for me in the script. It felt like it was serving a lot of masters, right? The reintroduction of Ross, the FBI agent, and the fact that we get that he is married to Valentina de Fontaine, who is eventually going to probably lead up the Thunder. There's a lot of characters.
They were once married. Yeah.
There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot going on that is not in Wakanda is the other thing. There's a lot of non-Wakanda in this film. I think the thing I loved so much about Black Panther is we got to see this world, this beautiful established Wakanda as a place. And this movie has so many storylines and so many places that it has to take you that Wakanda never gets to seat in one place.
Well, I think the idea that now that everyone knows about Wakanda is like it's almost Wakanda is sullied now that everyone knows about it in a sense. You know what I mean? And I think that I was pretty impressed with them juggling a lot of storylines up until like we get to like maybe the final battle, and admittedly so, like Marvel movies usually drop the ball in the penultimate end and then the end of their movies when the villain has to get beaten. But, like Riri Williams, Ironheart, she's the new Iron Man. And I think that there were a lot of similarities, I think, with the first Iron Man and her journey. I feel like she is the catalyst also. I think you mentioned maybe that.
She's the one who makes the machine that can do the vibranium detection.
Yeah. She's the super young, black girl who's 19 years old, who's at MIT, who's super smart, and she built the vibranium detector that the United States stole her idea.
Yeah.
I don't believe it was given to her. I don't believe she gave it to them. They just kind of like, keep tabs on these kinds of things and
Yeah.
stole it, and are using it as, they kind of weaponize it to get the vibranium. So,
I think
um,
the fun part there is like you get to see a little bit of her personality. I wish they're stuffing so many origins in this movie. That also hurts. Like Namor and Riri Williams as characters both get
mhm,
their origins in the same movie. Like we've seen a lot of like backdoor pilots and things like that, but these are two. One is a character that's been around since the beginning of Marvel, right? Like one of the original three characters that were created by Marvel Comics in
mhm,
Namor the Submariner. And then Riri Williams is this sort of new creation in the last 10 years of an interesting character that has an amazing backstory. And both of them are in this film together. And we don't get enough, in my opinion, we don't get enough of Riri. We don't honor that character. I'm hopeful that Ironheart, the television show, will get further into her backstory because she feels like a bolted on aspect of this film to give them the MacGuffin that is going to be why the movie happens, and they don't give her a lot of opportunity to shine or to give us the why. We get little moments of that, like she created the vibranium detector because her professor said she couldn't, and she was doing it as a school project. Like,
mhm.
and they asked her like at one point they were like, "How long did this take for you to build?" And she was like, "3 months." Like that's unbelievable, right? Like I assume the federal government has got entire labs working on trying to figure this out for the last 10 years or 5 years since Wakanda has been on their on their radar and that vibranium has been a thing.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I think there's a little bit of that I'm a little. It makes me a little sad. It feels like there's a lot of work for people who don't know these characters. Also, I think we're starting to hit a little bit of we're butting up against sort of the casual viewer and there's a lot of homework, right? Like we've felt that a little bit, I think, since the inception of Disney Plus as a service. I feel like there's a lot more homework that you're going to have to do in order to feel like you're part of these Marvel stories. They're less standalone, right? Black Panther as a film could have been in and of itself, right? Like this is a film that's a little bit harder, and I think it's going to be homework for people for the new Ironheart television show for wherever Namor goes, right? Like this is sort of a it's going to become it required some homework and it's going to be the homework for something in the future, which not every one of these films always felt that way.
yeah, I mean, I didn't experience that with Ironheart because I knew the television show is on its way, and I was like, oh, cool. There's Riri Williams,
Yeah,
you know,
I think the casting is
and
spot on. I think her energy's amazing, right? Like she
well,
brought
yeah, and
a lot of
y-
youthful exuberance to the movie, and an honest like like when they take her to Talakan, and she's just like, "I'm never getting out of here. We're never getting out of here," right? Like
right.
that's the way you would react, right? Like these
Mhm.
amazing blue skinned people took us down to a place that would crush us if we weren't inside this building.
Yeah,
Um,
and yeah, I think that I don't know. I personally think it was smart to introduce her into this movie, and also be the kind and to be a good way to have her. And she was introduced because she's the catalyst, and like we're not going to
yeah,
get. I think when you insert someone into a story like that, it's like we're not going to get her whole backstory because like
yeah,
you lit the fire. Now we have to deal with the fire. I'm not going to sit down and talk to you about like where you came from, but that's exactly why the Ironheart TV show that's going to happen on Disney Plus is literally picking up right where this movie leaves off. So I think that's really smart.
yeah,
And but I also just think it goes to show of like I just think it's interesting that like um it's like Black Panther is the movie
yeah,
as far as Wakanda Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the movie that opens the door to like a whole new showcase for a much misrepresented group of people
yep,
or underrepresented group of people that aren't black or African American
yep.
into the Marvel universe, as far as the introducing Namor into this. I think is I don't know, there's something very interesting about that, and I think it's cool, and I think that it's the power of kind of hopefully, underrepresented people sticking together and giving opportunities to each other.
Yeah.
I think that for me, one of the things that I think is I'm constantly thinking about is I think that the there is very minimal presence of white characters in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that when they are present, I think it's very interesting. And I don't know if everyone picks up on this, but it's like we first talk about, in the UN, and the Queen is talking to a French diplomat.
Yes.
And the French diplomat is like, "We want your vibranium," like in more elegant words than not.
Yeah.
And then we jump to Haiti,
Yes.
which is like has a sordid history with France, right?
Yep.
As far
Mm-hmm.
and they're flourishing, and I think that's really interesting that now Wakanda is in Haiti, and things in Haiti are doing very well. And then I think what is the next one? I don't know. There's just like these very interesting, like like the fact that like Talok, like Namor is when he goes back to I'm kind of jumping around because I'm just like off the top of my head talking, but like when Namor brings his mother back to like where they originated when they were living on land, there's like it's now a plantation with like slaves and everything like that, and he burns it to the ground, and and then this like the relationship with like America and Wakanda, it's
Yeah.
like I think it's really scary that like the mostly the two main white actors in the movie, one of them is saying like, could you imagine if America was the only superpower with vibranium? And then Julie Louis Dreyfus is like, I dream about it all the time in
Yeah.
like the scariest possible way.
Well, and the character you're talking about is Everett Ross, right? And I love the fact that Okoye always calls him her favorite uh, what's
Favorite
the term?
colonizer.
Colonizer, yeah. And then
Yeah.
when she comes to save him, she pulls the door off the back of. He's been captured because they think he's helping Wakanda, and she's like, "Oh, it's my favorite colonizer," and change. That's funny. Like, there. I think the thing I really took away from this film is when we open with the T'Challa sequence, and then we go to the UN, and the two nations that are talking are two white nations, France and the US, represented by white people. And then they are dealing with Wakanda, and then Wakanda is now interacting with a Latinx community, right? If we want to shorthand to Mayan culture being in Mexico and Mexican world. I think what's interesting about the film is take a step back, right? Like if the Latinx community and the Black community can work together, they can be the most powerful thing on planet Earth, right? Is what I think the story is showing us.
Yeah.
But they're constantly being attacked by the white cultures.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really amazing feat to pull this film off. And also it doesn't, there's no moment where this sounds preachy, right? Like, what's his name? Who wrote and created Babylon 5? He's a comic book writer. He did a run of Thor. Yes.
Not John Michael Straczynski.
Straczynski, yeah. So I really like Straczynski's writing, but I always feel like I'm waiting for him to drop the shoe of morality on me. This movie has none of that, right? There's no moral high ground that this film is showing the world as it is in the MCU world. And that is, it's presented with like little, you are now, it's up to you to make your decision about this. Right. It's almost like when we were talking about Tar, right? Like I feel like the movie Tar does not have an opinion on her as a character until the last 10 minutes, which is why I was so confused by the ending. This is a film that like is showing the world as it is, right? Like the world is this. You have to reckon with it, audience. And I think that's it really dances that line so beautifully of showing like the beauty and power of Wakanda, the beauty and power of this entire new group of people, right? The fact that like I talked about him as like the ultimate anti-hero. He's actually like, one of the podcasts I listened to talked about the fact that like Namor as a character is just cool. Everything in the comics, he's always, but what he's doing is to protect his people. If that means he has to kill the planet, fine. If that means
Right.
like I'm going to work
they're not a
with other
villain.
people to save the planet, fine. Right? Like his motivation is obvious. It is, I care about my people, and whether I am not going to allow you to ever touch my people. And that there's something powerful about that as a character, right? Like
Yeah.
T'Challa and T'Chaka were protective of Wakanda, but they were not willing to be villains to protect Wakanda. Whereas I feel like Namor is just like, I don't care what it takes, right? Like I am a living god that protects my people, right?
Mhm.
And that is what I'm here to do. I was given this power, and he derives his power from his love of his mother, right? Like she took the plant that allowed them to eventually breathe water and not breathe air, and he was she was pregnant with him when she took this plant, and that's why he is unique. He's mutated because he was partially formed, whatever science you want to land on that, but that's why he is quote unquote this mutant.
Yeah, and like this is like 154 AD. Like he is very old, and he has
Yes.
seen a lot and stuff like that. Yeah.
I really love the movie. I just felt like the story was a little messy. That's I loved the character. Introducing Namor into the Marvel universe has been something I've been waiting for. He's such an important character, and knowing that he's the first mutant, right, and that we as comic book fans have been waiting for this story to be told. I think they threaded the needle really well to introduce this character. I love the idea that he's connected to like Mayan religion, right? That he is Kukulkan Khan, right? Like he is the feather winged, serpent.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's so well done, and I also love that it gave one of my favorite actors, what's his name, who plays M'Baku, the chance to say like, like he has this like right. His approach and his physicality is always fun, but the way he says things, he's such a smart actor, and the fact that like we got that moment where he's trying, he originally is like, we will kill the fish man, right? Like we'll just kill him, but then you realize is like they look at him as a god. Like if we don't kill him, right, they're going to do everything in their power to kill us. We are now creating a religious war if we attack Namor, right? Like, and I love the fact that we get that little, it doesn't take much to tell that story, but it is M'Baku as a character that realizes like, we're going to have a lifetime of war against them if we start this. Is that what you want? And he's the very warrior based aspect of Wakanda. And he recognizes like, do you want like generations of war? Because I don't know that we're going to crush them, right? Like, and he's sort of the voice of reason, which you don't expect, which I really like,
Yeah, because now we're following Letitia Wright, who plays Shuri, who is Chadwick Boseman's sister. She goes through a lot. I mean, obviously, she goes through continual trauma throughout this entire film, starting with like the death of her brother, and she couldn't save him. And she's like not wanting to, she doesn't want to stop mourning, and she wants to burn the world down, which sets up a very interesting scene later on in the movie. But there's a passing of the torch here too, because obviously this movie's called Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and she's the next Black Panther. She eventually learns how to synthesize the flower that gives them their power, and she takes it, and now we have, at least for maybe the next movie, she'll be Black Panther. So
I think it's also hard because Shuri as a character is sort of the light, sort of bratty sister component, and so much weight of the movie falls directly on Letitia Wright's shoulders. And the character doesn't get to have the sort of where I think this would have gone in another movie. I also think this movie is suffering from, a lot of us are trying to write the story in our head that we would have written, because we all know that Ryan Coogler had one story written, and then this is sort of the story that happened after Chadwick's passing. So, and trying to thread the needle of like, how do we keep the story moving forward? How do we honor this character? How do we honor the man? And then how do we do what we're supposed to be doing to fit into the phase 4, the end of the phase 4, world and the like heading into phase 5, we have connective tissue we have to put here. So
Mhm.
that's why I feel bad for everyone involved, because I don't know that this is the story that they would have told. And I think Letitia Wright is sort of shackled with the weight of the character that I don't think she was. Shuri as a character wasn't meant to carry the weight of this movie, and it removes the what was so much fun about Shuri from the first film. You lose the levity of that character, and you also have forced her into the spotlight, which I think is
But I
something that
think that's
happens, right? But
but I yeah, exactly. I think like that there's the drama there, and yeah, like you definitely feel that, and you definitely clock that,
yeah,
and I- she. I
not that
think
she
it's
doesn't have,
interesting.
as an actress, doesn't have the ability to do it. I just think
Oh, sure.
what we were drawn to as Shuri, right, was like the bratty little sister princess, and we lose that in this film very quickly, right? Like you get no
Yeah.
time of Shuri's sort of brilliant, unabashed ability to poke fun at the world and about royalty and about, right. Like there's a great moment where she like hangs up on her mother, and someone's like, "You hung up on the queen." And she's like, "I hung up on my mother. It's different,"
Yeah.
right? Like,
Well,
and
yeah.
you don't get a lot of that in this film.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, but but I think, yeah, I think that the fact that like the loss of her brother, and also Letitia Wright's loss of, a fellow, actor,
Yeah,
with Chadwick Boseman, like, yeah, I felt like, they create, I think overall, I think the movie that they created, like does very much honor Chadwick Boseman, and I still think so this is also the end of phase 4
yeah, it's the last film in
for
that phase.
for
Yeah,
Marvel, for the Marvel phases. Um and yeah, I think that I would say that this wraps up this phase, but more so like, and I don't know if it propels us into phase 5, but I think it definitely, I'm like, I could care less about at the end of this, when this is all said and done, when I ended this movie, I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait for Ant-Man.
right.
I was like, oh, I can't wait for Black Panther 3.
Oh, I
To just
can't wait to see what they were going to do with Namor as a character. Like I
Well,
now
yeah,
that
that's
he's
the thing.
introduced, I'm like, this is what I was hopeful for in this film, is that they had been alluding to the fact that like there was a possible connection to Namor from the first film, and I was like,
Mhm,
oh my god, I want to see the two kings, right? Like
mhm,
that's the other thing this movie suffers from, is like in my head for 5 years I've been thinking like when we get Namor, it's going to be him and it's going to be T'Challa face to face, and two different types of kings, and right, like the modern science world of Wakanda, and then the underwater world of that has to be some sort of modern aspect, right? How do these people
mhm.
live? What world have they created? So
Yeah,
I was excited about the introduction of that universe, of that world into this universe, and it just we're all suffering a little bit from like woulda, coulda, shoulda, that what we've been writing. Like for me, the movie I was hopeful for is that we can talk about the post credit scene, but I think there's an interesting one that I think it would have been if Namor as a character had been watching Wakanda and then sensed the loss of the Black Panther that then was coming in to take over and to collect there's a story of him becoming this sort of conqueror that we didn't have here, right? And I that was the hope I was going into this film with, was like, what if we had this point where he's like, I've watched you and we can take you now, right? Like we need a foothold on Earth, on the surface. I think I've been writing a story in my head that the movie didn't get, and it sucks. Like I'm now comparing a film that was made to what I think could have been made, and that's not a
yeah,
fair criticism.
sure.
But I think that's the thing we always end up with, especially those of us who understand the historical component of these comic books and how they can connect. Right, we've all been doing a little bit of this like mental math the whole time of like what do we do with this character once we get him, right? Like is what I kept
Yeah.
that's so that for me it fulfilled the potential because I'm excited to see where we're going.
Mhm.
But it's not the story I thought we would get.
Sure, yeah, and in the comics, I mean, Namor has, well, if we're talking about the comics, Namor has, he's attacked and tried to flood Wakanda many times,
Yeah,
both when Shuri is queen and both when T'Challa was king. So, it's still, it's, I mean, obviously there's still there's still a connection there after this movie.
Yep.
Um, so the interesting thing is like I think one of the reasons why the first Black Panther was so important is because culturally it made an impact, and I think that this movie still also makes a huge impact culturally,
Yeah.
where it sometimes reminds me that like this is almost more than a comic book movie,
Yeah.
uh, to put it lightly. And sometimes I feel like it's hard to fit it into the other movies, and not that it needs to, not that it should be, I guess, but like I don't know where I'm going with this comment. It's just like I don't know if or how Namor is going to interact with like fucking Ant-Man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um it's I'm curious to see what happens after this.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I think that yeah, like they created such a grounded, honest, scary
Mhm.
character for the MCU and Namor that I mean, I feel like everyone's like talking about like Mephisto or like this or that or like who the big bads are going to be. It's like, dude, Namor's your big fucking bad
Yeah.
until he's not.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is almost like, as far as an executive goes, like, well, great, thanks guys for putting this huge monkey wrench and creating this really moving, incredible, complex character that we now have to deal with. Because to me, I'm like, I don't, yeah, like I don't know, like maybe it's also just kind of like Marvel fatigue a little bit with
Yeah.
like, like trying to stay like in the know and follow this like 20-year storyline that continues on and continues on. But I
Well,
don't
I
know,
think
like there's
just a smash cut to the end, right? We end up in a final battle where Shuri figures out, with the help of Riri, that he may be getting his powers from the water, right? He's obviously
Mhm,
breathing air, but he also is getting oxygen without breathing underwater. So it's almost like the yellow sun to Superman is what it seems like.
mhm,
His power comes from the water, from being wet. So they put him in a super duper dehydrator inside of a ship, and they
yeah,
weaken him slightly. And then that leads to a final fight, which is a pretty good fight, to be honest. The fight that's taking place on the ship, where they convinced that, where they were able to like get him to come to start the fight, and
mhm,
all the people from his race to appear, I think is one of the it is a big sequence that only the slow mo portions of the fights seem to be good. There's a lot of
yeah.
battle going on that surface of that ship, and I'm like, boy, we need some fight choreography, or let's pull it further away so we can't see, or let's pull closer so we can see less. The Michael Bay Transformer problem of like, this just looks like
Yeah.
gears. Like, it would have been better. There was a lot of middle length shots that I was like, there's some fighting happening, but it doesn't feel like they're landing
Well,
punches.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of storylines that have to culminate in this big fight. You've got the Riri storyline. She's fighting.
Yep.
All the I don't know what the citizens of Talokan are called. I don't remember if
Yeah.
they, but the citizens of Talokan are fighting. The Wakandans are fighting. There are different there are different facets of Wakandan warriors who are fighting.
Yep.
We've got M'Baku to follow, and then all of a sudden we have to go away and we have to to follow Namor and Shuri fighting. So yeah, there's like a lot of things that had to culminate here, and I think like, to be honest, like I still think that the first Avengers movie tracked everyone really well,
Yeah.
and you got this idea that like everyone was fighting all over New York in that movie, and I just feel like tracking, as far as tracking the characters, and giving them, like you said, like just like some nice showcases here and there, like was just a mess. And I feel like this is when the movie lost me. I was like, this giant aircraft carrier, which actually didn't look very big to me,
Yeah.
is gonna like these two entities, these two superpowers are gonna come and battle on this little platform. This is where I got lost from the movie. I kind of like was like, oh man, this fight's not very good.
Yeah.
I want to get past this fight. Um, that the also, like I felt it interesting. Like for me, I didn't feel like any character was shoehorned in per se, except when all of a sudden they give Okoye, I like the Night Angel suits or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
the
they're like,
Midnight Angel armor. Yeah.
yeah, like sure. So, and those are in the comic book, and they look very close to what they look like in the comic book. And sometimes comic book designs don't translate really well to film. And I thought like this was the one thing I was like, oh, this doesn't look very good. And
Yeah.
oh, I don't think I think of Okoye as like to be honest, I thought that there was an idea in my head, and yes, I'm writing a little bit of what my movie was, but like Okoye goes through some shit in this movie, and I
Yeah.
think it's incredibly moving. And I think that
That the
she has
costume takes away from it.
yeah, but not only that, but just like she has this like really intense scene with the queen who banishes her and strips her of her general title.
Yeah.
And that was like such a really intense scene because it was all honest, like everything that the queen was saying is happened in the first movie or
Yeah.
and I honestly thought that she was going to be the next Black Panther.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the two stories I wrote in my head were that Shuri realized she shouldn't be the Black Panther because she was full of vengeance. And it was either Okoye picked up the title
Or
or
Nakia.
Nakia. And I
Right.
thought, she's been the war dog, right? She's been the one who's
Yeah.
been out there representing Wakanda. Wouldn't that be awesome that you have like her sister-in-law come
Mhm.
and be the Black Panther and Shuri become the queen, right? Like that would
Right.
have made, or bringing Okoye back and honoring her with the title. She was
Yeah.
T'Challa's number one for so long. Wouldn't that have been? Yeah. So I ended up in the same spot, but
Yeah.
I think the last thing I wanted to point out is let's jump over to the closing sequence, right? So we get the mid-credit scene where you get Shuri going to visit her sister-in-law, and we get the final reveal that T'Challa and Nakia had a son.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, in secret, and they kept him safe in Haiti, and Nakia, played by Lupita Nyong'o, like she didn't come back for
the funeral,
T'Challa's funeral.
Yeah.
She was keeping their child safe in Haiti. But yeah, Shuri comes to kind of finally mourn the passing of big spoilers. Not only her brother, but her mother as well.
Yes.
And
who gives her life to save Riri, which is right.
Yeah,
someone
which is
who's
also
of a lost tribe. She's not
Yeah.
part of Wakanda, you know.
Which was also really interesting when I was saying kind of like the journey of Riri is very, very much like Tony Stark, like Jensen in the first Iron Man movie. Like his family's dead, and he sacrifices himself to save Tony Stark. And kind of the same way that the Queen Angela Bassett drowns because she's saving Riri too. So
yeah, I think for me, I think if I was going to take out one storyline, it would have been the Contessa storyline, like her being a part of it and the connect, like cutting back and forth to her and Ross just didn't feel like Ross being the person that was the point person from Wakanda, that he's like the liaison, makes sense. But bringing the rest of that story in just felt like Marvel baggage as opposed to like something that I was happy with. That I didn't think moved the story along. I know it's going to eventually mean something more, right? Because we're heading towards Thunderbolts, but like, yeah, I get it. That's happening. We didn't need her in this film at all, in my opinion. You could have cut every scene she was a part of, and it wouldn't have had no impact. You know, yeah. And I think the last piece is the son's name is Toussaint, right? Who's named after a leader of a slave rebellion in Haiti. So it's an important name there. And Shuri comments like, that's a beautiful name and it's an important name, you know? And then he says, that's my Haitian name. My real name is T'Challa.
Yeah. And I got chills when he said that.
Yeah.
And
what an amazing casting. the boy who plays T'Challa he looks like they found a child that could have been born to between the two
I
actors. Like
I
his face has like so much Chadwick Boseman and the
He's
dimples
got
and the
Chadwick Boseman's dimples.
oh
Yeah,
my
like
god.
I had to check IMDb immediately after leaving the theater. I was like, did they just? Is this like a super like honoring of Chadwick, and they have his son like
Yeah.
playing the next Black Panther? Um, but this also opens up the door, and this is kind of it's a beautiful continued remembrance um to the character of T'Challa, to Chadwick Boseman. But also we're like jumping back into like Marvel world where
Yeah.
yes, like in some different realities, not the 616 where um, there is T'Challa does have offspring in some other realities, and we're dealing with the multiverse here.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, like so I feel like I don't know how Namor is going to fit into the other movies,
Yep.
but I feel like I could be wrong, and this is just speculation, but it's like this child is gonna get aged up by Kang.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when, but maybe not till after Secret Wars, maybe not till phase, like whatever the Kang Dynasty one is or
Yeah.
whatever. But eventually, we will get a grown T'Challa,
Yeah.
Junior T'Challa the second, and we'll get Black Panther again.
And I think what's sad is right. Like I have another pitch for this film, which would have been really interesting, is if when T'Challa dies, if his wife brought his son back to Wakanda, and you had a situation where Shuri is not accepting that he should be king because he's a child, right, and that
Mm,
she had to take up the mantle of Black Panther because he cannot. Right, because of an attack from Namor. Like, there's so many ways this story. I think there's a lot of really interesting pieces on the board that I feel like could have been put into a different movie that would have gotten me almost us to the same spot we are today, but we could have gotten there slightly differently and a little more cohesive.
sure. I
That's
think if I Yeah, I think if so, I think if Chadwick Boseman hadn't passed away, but he didn't like, let's say, for example, didn't want to do Black Panther,
yeah,
I think that storyline that you just said is much more feasible. But because of his unfortunate passing, I think that mm, kind of complicating the beginning of the movie
yeah,
would take away from the honor that they're trying to bestow
yeah,
on Chadwick Boseman. I mean, um, I feel like one of the biggest impacts I think that I've had from this movie just being on social media, and unfortunately, it's been an angry one, and I'm just going to take this moment to rage about it a little bit, I guess, since it's our podcast.
yep,
So many cis white males are like, why aren't the Avengers at the Black Panther's funeral? Why isn't at least like Bucky there? Like, that's fucking bullshit. You know what, dudes? Now you know what minorities feel like when they're not represented in big budget movies. Like,
mhm,
a let's let like Black culture, African Americans, Black people have this moment, and now you know what it feels like to not be not be invited to the table. Because I mean, that's what minorities go through all the time in Hollywood. So
yep.
you know, it's a ridiculous comment. I think that a lot of people are making.
I think overall, like the more we talk about it, the more I feel like solid about the film. I don't know that this is. I don't. If we talk about like Oscar representation, whereas like Black Panther was actually nominated, I think this film is likely not going to be nominated above the craft services. I think the sad part is I think that Angela
Wait,
Bassett gives
craft
a
services. What does that
all the
mean?
below the line, right? Like so production design,
Gotcha.
costuming, I think not craft services, but like I do think
I know. I was like,
there
what?
there's a bunch of stuff in this film that I think could probably get nominated across the board. I think the sad part is Angela Bassett gives such a performance, but without it getting a best director nod, a best picture nod, I don't know that
Mm,
that the Academy will recognize her because I don't know that the film is something that they would believe should get a best actress, a best supporting actress nod. But I think Angela Bassett, in a very complicated best supporting actress year, is giving one of the most amazing performances. I think she needed one more scene where she was where it was smaller, right? She has this like powerful sequences. I think one, like she gets so close and then Namor is introduced. Namor arrives, right? That scene with Shuri is so close to what I think is like the Oscar bait, right? And then it gets cut short. I think, but the sequences she has at the UN, the sequence she has where she's talking to Wakanda, where she like, there's so many amazing sequences.
Yeah, I mean, like getting back to like when she's berating Okoye, like to me that's the scene where I'm like, yo, this is not just about Wakanda, you know what I mean?
And she's just so strong when she's at the UN. The outfit she's in is sleeveless, and she's so muscular, right? Just her natural physiology matches the intensity.
Yeah, she's powerful. She's very powerful. She's a very powerful presence. Yeah,
it's the same reason I love Okoye, M'Baku, right? His sheer physicality next to Shuri, because Shuri's tiny. And every time you see them in the same space, you're like, Winston Duke is like 6'2" and like 270. And then he's wearing all this like armor that makes him even bigger. And she's this like, 5'2"-ish, like 108 pounds. And they're both powerful people, but his is so physical and hers is so like mental. It's so much fun to see the two of them in the same space. And I the contrast is always great. But Angela Bassett, every scene she's in, like not only is her mind coming through, the way she carries herself as a character, but she has the ability to back it up with physicality, and the way she carries herself, the weight of what she's saying is all together, right? Like it's what makes that performance so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I concur that like, yeah, like, I mean, I think that a lot of people need to see this movie. I don't know if award recognition is like on the table for it, but like, I think that it's already doing really well at the box office. I think
the production design of like the underwater nation, right? In the first film we were so wowed and dazzled by Wakanda that I think we now get a whole new universe to be wowed by in Talokan, right? Like I love the idea that it's using like currents to move as travel. The only problem is there's so much of it is dark because it's underwater, right? Like that hurts it from us getting even more involved and feeling so much more connected because there's so much darkness. Even at the cinema. Oh, I didn't mention. So I went to Cinemark and saw it in XD, the Cinemark XD. My experience was fantastic. Cinemark as a theater chain has really done well in my area. There's two Cinemarks. There's one in Fairfax and one in Centerville. I live in Northern Virginia. And so this was in the XD theater, their sort of fancy, like Dolby Cinema-esque version of what they do. And it has these like luxury loungers that are like big lounger chairs. And my wife looked at me and she's like, we're not going to any other theaters. This is the only theater I want to see movies in. It was her experience. So it just says a lot for what they have. It also has a full bar. It has higher end food at this location. But just the experience of seeing the film was really good. The sound is good. Cool. There's walls around each set of, each layer. So you're isolated away. It's almost like you're sitting on two Barca loungers at your house with like the 200 inch television,
Right. I had a little less of a good experience. I went to a Regal 4D IMAX 3D situation. And sometimes those are really, well, I don't know. I've never had a great experience with 4D. So people who don't know 4D, it's literally like the chairs are like on hydraulics and they move with like the camera, they shake, they like when there are battle sequences, there are like pistons that kind of hit you in the back, water shoots at you. And like I didn't have the greatest experience because like the fight scenes were like the chair was moving too much, it was hard to focus.
It was so like you're getting punched in the kidneys.
Yeah, well, not just that, but the whole chair is moving around. It's like hard to focus on what's happening on the screen. The one thing that I thought was cool was that when there were shots of Wakanda, they sprayed some sort of like scent in the air, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm it smells like
That's cool.
floral.
Little smell-o-vision.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool, but I do think I want to see this movie again in a chair that doesn't move. So
that the Disney Plus experience with IMAX enhanced is good, because the movie's beautiful, right? Like, I really want to spend more time in the underwater nation than I do even anything else, because I'm hopeful that the HDR on it, like, they'll retool some of the lighting to make it a little brighter. So it may even be a reason to buy it in 4K, to be honest, on a 4K Blu-ray, if they
Right.
adjust the lighting and make it like kind of like I was talking about with the Game of Thrones, like making the experience better. It should be fantastic in the experience we saw it, both of them. But I still think it could probably use just a little bit of like fixing and enhancing the brightness of some of the things in the underwater world.
Yeah. Cool.
I think that's it for us. If you've hung in all this time, thank you so much. We're 2 hours and 10 minutes in, and we had a lot to talk about this week. So thank you for hanging in there with us. And again, rate, review us wherever we are. 5 stars is our favorite number. And please share us with your friends. And we want to hear from you. In last week's episode on Spotify, you can answer the question of your favorite cameo in the film. So I added that directly into the episode. So feel free to answer that question, be a part of this community, and give us some feedback.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Have a great week. See ya. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.